privilege because you get to share in these incredibly intimate and profound moments in individuals' lives and their lives of their loved ones. And I think if we're awake to it, it teaches us about our own lives and what's really important, and helps us reevaluate our own priorities, and hopefully, again, if we're awake to it, not postponing some of the important conversations with the people that we love. And I think it's an enormous gift, personally.
It's a hard question to answer because I don't know what I'd be like if I wasn't. You know, it's been such a part of my life for so long. I think this isn't quite the answer, but you know, one of the things when you watch patients and families go through the amount of suffering that they go through and make the decisions as they're traversing their own health care, and you know, they vary tremendously. I mean, for some patients, the most important thing is that the legacy that they leave with their families, that they fought to the very last moment. And we all go crazy about that because we see that it can cause harm and it can cost, and you know, and we feel guilty if we can't get patients to adjust their goal. And I think that was very true, especially 10, 15 years ago when we weren't very transparent with what we knew. I think we are much more transparent when we are talking with patients and families about the risk and the burdens, and that this line of treatment may cost them. And then if they still choose to do that, I think it's important to honor that. And so people are frequently surprised when on the palliative care team we're arguing that, hey, this is the patient's right. And then you have other patients who unbelievably, and I don't know how they do this, get to a point of acceptance of their own death, and there's an aura of peace and acceptance that I have no idea how they accomplish after 30 years of watching and working with people. I think the thing that keeps you humble is you don't know what you're going to do when you're in that position. And I think that, you know, I have my vision of what I think I will do, and I'm hoping I'm on one end versus the other, and that's what I think will be my trajectory, but I don't know, and I think that that's important to keep in mind, is that your own struggles are your struggles, and how you respond will be how you respond. If you're very lucky, you'll have very skilled people like Megan and David and Susan here to guide you and guide your family. But I think the most important thing is to recognize that it's each individual's journey, and we need to respect their journey and not impose our view of what we think is the right journey. Not quite what you were asking.
Yeah, it's beautiful to say. Is there anything you guys would like to add to?
I would add that, would echo what she's saying, is that it's an individual journey. Each person, you don't know how they're going to respond, you don't know how you're going to respond. So, yeah.
And how are you going to respond to Rusty's poems?
Very nice. Very nice.
I apologize. I always give my students a hard time when theirs are on. I apologize. Speaking of humbling.
I think it's also interesting to look at the difference between healing and curing. And that those can be different things, and my experience is that they happen, you can die healed, but not cured. So, interesting dichotomy.
I think going back to what you were saying, you know, as clinicians and providers, the more we can be aware of our own stuff, the less likely we're going to be to impose it on the patients that we work with or the families that we work with. So even if I kind of feel like none of us have the right or a great or a comprehensive answer to that question, just being able to ask the question and consider it can be helpful in working with people at the end of life as well. Even if we don't have all the answers, just being able to think about it and contemplate it and talk with our colleagues about it or read about it, whatever we might do, is going to be helpful in our work with people at the end of life.
In addition to agreeing wholeheartedly with, because I thought that was off. Someone must disagree with what I was about to say.
Someone from the back of the room down
I had a very dear friend who was a longtime social worker who died 2 years ago after being diagnosed with a stage 4 glioblastoma, and the life expectancy is usually about 18 months with that diagnosis, and she lived for 4 years. And we actually went back and looked at the pathology report because we couldn't believe it. And she decided early on to forego any kind of conventional Western treatment because it wasn't helping her. But she was a long-time yoga and meditation practitioner, and lived and died with a phenomenal degree of grace. And I, like Mary Denise, would like to hope to be somewhere on that end of the continuum, and yet, as you said, we have no idea until it's our turn. But I learned so much in sitting with her each week and just watching her go through that.
Any questions?
How do you prevent burnout? You all deal with families and patients that are, it's like a very heavy subject. How do you keep from getting too emotionally involved and letting it affect you?
I can say it does affect me, sometimes more than others. Like that's just part of the work and being a human being. I wouldn't want the work to not affect me. But I certainly, and my the other clinicians in my clinic certainly emphasize self-care, right? So just basic stress management stuff. Most of the time after work, I'm at the gym. Mary Denise is there as well. At the gym working out after I've had a long, hard day of sitting and sharing and talking with people going through really tough stuff. For me, doing things like being physically active is helpful. Certainly things like meditation is helpful as well. I think one of the things that has been the most helpful is having supportive colleagues that I can talk with also. Supportive supervisors when I was in training, but colleagues now that I'm kind of out on my own. And we have a team meeting every week where it's just the clinicians and we get together and talk about the people that we're working with. And it's a chance to really say, gosh, I'm really struggling with that or this or that was really hard. And just being able to share in a place, in a way that feels safe to do so, alleviates so much of the stress. So I've been really, really fortunate in the colleagues that I've had, that it's okay to say, yeah, today was really a struggle. Let's go out for a glass of wine or whatever.
I have to reiterate, I am so lucky in that I work with a team of individuals who are incredibly supportive. And I think it doesn't happen by accident. It is an intentional decision that we made as a team that if we were going to be able to do this long term, we needed to come up with ways. So we're lucky that Susan comes and meets with us once a month. We're lucky, we meet daily to review the patients, and we can do just-in-time debriefing. I did go through a period on the team where we weren't supportive, and it was a very conflict-ridden team. And I don't know how I survived it. I do know that one day I completely blew up. I had to report myself to my supervisor for unprofessional conduct. And she said, I've been waiting for this to happen for a year. I can't believe you put up with it for as long as you did. But, what that led me to was to seek a psychologist, and then that led me to mindfulness-based stress reduction. And I am unable to leave my house without doing my meditation in the morning before I go to work. Even if it's 10 minutes, I go to put my hand on the door, I'm running late, I gotta go, traffic's bad, and can't leave. I have to go back and sit down and do that. So you pay a high price if you don't pay attention.
And I don't believe burnout is necessarily always a terrible thing. I think that we will periodically bump up against times of burnout. I think the key is to recognize it and take steps to do something about it. The examples that both of my colleagues have given, and I know for me that when I bumped into a period of time of feeling burnout, I had to just soul search about what I need to change. And for me, part of what has kept the work new is diversifying a little bit by doing some teaching, doing some writing, things like that. My dog is my mindfulness-based stress reducer. And that really helps. I learned from a nurse, actually, who had been very, very burned out, that she started, when she was walking her dog, to notice something different every single day, even if it was the same darn walk. And I've incorporated that. And so some days it'll be how exquisitely beautiful the trees are, or just noticing somebody's little rock wall that I haven't noticed before, or whatever it is. But I think slowing it down and taking a deep breath. One of the doctors I work with uses those little flags from outside the exam room door as symbolic of a transition, where he clips the flag over and he goes into the patient room, takes a deep breath, and is able to be fully present rather than distracted with other things on his mind. So whatever works, I think.
I think we all need techniques, colleagues, social support systems. I personally got fairly involved with heart rate variability studies about 15 years ago with the Heart Math Institute after I had a really bad accident. It was very helpful for me. And I can remember attending a training program, and they mostly work with nurses in hospitals because it's a high stress level, and the statement that caught my attention was, how long does it take to get centered? It's like one breath. That you can, if you practice it, you can do it in one breath. And they talked about nurses going from room to room, or whoever, clinicians going from room to room to room. And so, meditation, yoga, whatever you need to know.
I think the other thing is, for me, I don't take work into my house. So if I'm working on a paper or a presentation, I go into the office and I work on it at the office. For other people, it's really important to be at home, and they enjoy work at home. I had another colleague who, when he walked into his door at the end of a day, he visualized putting his jacket on the bushes in front of his house. And that was leaving work behind, and then he'd go in and be his family and his husband and his father. And then when he came out in the morning, he would pick up his jacket and symbolically put it on and process the day so that he was ready when he got there. So I think all those techniques that he learned are helpful.
There's a great article about this very topic, and they chronicle the lives of these two oncologists, and this one oncologist said that he learned that he couldn't walk in the door and be carrying a bunch of stuff because his little 6-year-old would launch herself as soon as she'd hear his keys in the door into his arms. And so he incorporated that into his ritual of literally having his workday knocked out of him so he could be present with his home life, which was lovely.
So we only have a few minutes left, so in closing comments, do you have any advice that you would give to anyone who's looking to go into this field? Little tidbit to hold on to.
I just had a quick question. I wondered if any of you where you work experience, different people that want to volunteer to bring happiness to patients, to dogs, and that kind of things. And I've always wondered what kind of an impact from your perspective that actually makes, and if it prepares people to maybe die because they feel happier, or to fight harder, or if there's anything that has maybe stood out
we have volunteers who work with our patients, and I think what I tell volunteers is that they have the hardest job, because they walk into that room without a role, without an agenda, without a purpose, without a task, and their role is only, what a small word, their role is to be present to whatever happens. And even if the patient kicks them out, there's very few people that the patient can just kick out, right? And so there's a lot of power in a patient saying, hey, not now, get out. And that's a successful visit. And so I think what I see the volunteers bringing is a level of normalcy in a foreign environment. I mean, you know, the hospitals that we have created are, what I think about them is it's the equal if you took me and you dropped me by helicopter in the deepest jungles of Africa, and you didn't give me a dictionary, you didn't give me a map, you didn't give me the language, you didn't give me any cultural acclimatation, and then you're asking me to make the most difficult decisions in my entire life. And so to have somebody who can help normalize my experience, and that's having dogs and cats, and you know, that's normal feeling and interaction that they get very little in the allopathic kingdoms we've created.
And per your question about any tips, you know, if you decide to venture into working with people at the end of life, I would just say it can be deeply rewarding, but don't try to do it by yourself. We're still here because we're a team, and that has, I think, has allowed us to continue to do this work for a long time.
Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. So we're going to have a break now before the next section starts, and there will be some snacks and drinks, and we hope that you guys will join us so people can continue to ask you questions.
Thank you so much.